Today we're talking all about annual planning, and our agenda, let's go here, is going to be a quick intro to Jim and I. If you haven't attended one of these webinars before, that'll be helpful. We're just going to go into a general meeting overview, and we'll talk about some of like the prep that we need to do, and also get into day 1 and day 2 specifically. So they're very different days. You're going through like team building experiences and like kind of a look back in day 1, whereas day 2, you're doing more of your future prep. And then we will, like Stephen mentioned, save some time for IDS at the end. So post your questions in that chat area. We'll be picking them up either during the webinar or at the end.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so quick intro to me. I'm head of client success and product here at 90. I will be taking us through the product. So as we talk about things like customizing the agenda or where to find the SWOT and all of that kind of technical aspect, I will be walking us through the software. And then Jim, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Thanks, Christine. So I'm Jim Haviland. I am a coach and also a member of the coach success team at 90. And I've been helping companies with annual planning sessions, Christine. I got to say, for a couple of decades. I'm not going to tell you how many. And there's a lot of great things that I've learned over the years. But the process we have in 90 and the learnings we have from EOS are all great ways to make sure we get great content and great outcomes out of it, which, anyone that's been through an annual planning session knows that it's not always a guarantee. So, and so I'm excited to share this time because, Christine, you know what? I often associate annual planning season because right now is when coaches start doing annual planning because it takes 2 days. So we end up eating a lot of time. It's October, November, December, and January. We are just chock full of annual planning. And so as my partner, Chris, I don't know if he likes me to say it. It's really pumpkin spice annual planning season because they come together. They come together. So yeah, are you a pumpkin spice fan, Christine?
I am, maybe not in coffee, but I like the treats that are out there.
Yeah, I like my comedy and my coffee dark, but pumpkin spice, I don't mind the smell at all. It's good, and it reminds me, hey, it's time to start planning for next year. So I'm excited to share this stuff because it's important stuff, man, and you don't get good at it. You don't do it often enough that you get good at it unless you have some help. So that's why we're here.
Yep. And we are going to start off by talking about really what the annual is. Before we jump into that, I do want to share the results of our poll. So we asked everybody if they have run one before. Let me go ahead and share these. It looks like just over half of us have not run an annual session at all. So this is going to be really helpful for thinking about the structure. And then it looks like between those of you guys that have run them, some of you used 90, half of you did not. So give you some additional context. Hopefully for you guys that have run it and used 90, you'll pick up a couple extra tips and tricks here too.
Yeah, and for those of you who've done it before, your experiences and where things fell short, make sure you make those part of the IDS so we can talk through it. Or if you've had a great experience and you've got something to add in, I'm going to bring all my experiences to bear, so Christine will too. There's more the merrier. That's really the point.
Definitely.
So, Christine, an annual. So people have been doing annual planning since the Peter Drucker days. They're like, hey, we got to figure out our strategy. So in quite specifically today, because it's important that we have definitions for our words, we're really talking specifically about the 2-day strategic plan that we put together as part of the EOS process. And it's a 2-day session. And it is really about it's a cornerstone of refreshing our strategic planning year over year. And it is, but without question, the most important part of making sure you have a great year going forward. So I want you to keep on going, and I'll just catch up with all the bullet points. So we're going to review the past year and the past quarter. So you got to do your whole year past that you review and your last quarter. So you're baking your quarterly into this two-day thing. But on top of that, you get a full review of your strategic plan, whether you're talking about a vision traction organizer or a one-page strategic plan, yada, yada, yada. You've got to go through all that stuff. And this is the time you spend on it. And it's good to look at it every year, Christine, but it's also good because you have that annual planning. As we know all too well, when you've got crazy visionaries working around you, to be able to put off, hey, we're not touching that until the annual. Like it's a part of that whole notion of compartmentalization. I know when I'm going to look at that stuff, when I'm going to dig back into that bucket of long-term issues and figure out what the future looks like. And here's the thing, it's also a great opportunity, I say, making a quantum improvement in team health. So many of the teams that I work with are really strong teams, but there's still that little bits of friction that develop over time. Like with anybody, you know, hey, it's the reason bands break up and marriages end. Over time, we develop the things we thought were adorable at one point become somewhat annoying, and you gotta deal with it. You gotta open it up. And it's during the workaday world, you don't have time to open that stuff up, but it's such a great opportunity to make that quantum improvement, understand each other as people a little bit deeper, and be able to share things you can't just share during the regular time. And getting into that framework, that mind frame, where that's why we're here. We're here to make a real leap forward in my self-improvement, that better and better version of my best self is an important part of it. And it's really your best chance to, if you're going to have a great year of quarterlies, it's going to be because you had a great annual. With people that haven't done the annual planning, the 1-year plan, 3-year plan, 10-year target, or BHAG, whatever you call it. If you don't have that stuff to give you the frame of reference, that point on the hill you're aiming towards, it's going to be hard to figure out what's most urgent, important every quarter. So, hey, I'm so glad you're here. And if you haven't done an annual yet, you gotta do an annual. If you're thinking about not doing it, holy mackerel, I'm going to give you 100 reasons that you have to do it. How about you, Christine? Do you got 100 reasons to do an annual?
Yeah, and I mean, especially a lot of people, I think, are probably intimidated by the 2-day aspect, blocking their calendar off and taking a sit back for that long. But it's one of those things where it ends up being so worth it.
And you got to think about in terms of exactly what I said. You're going to not be doing this little tweaky stuff during the rest of the year. You know there's a place for that long-term planning to go. That's the whole notion of compartmentalization. It's like, I'm going to put all that stuff in that bucket and really dig in, but you can't give it its due unless you put that time together and let yourself think about it that way. Because planning is valuable because you know what to do. Otherwise, you're going to burn through all kinds of bad cycles. So you're saving time the rest of the year by having a 2-day annual, I promise. So a couple of things that people try to do. People try to do it in their office. And once again, this is working on the business, not in the business. Just don't do it in the office. It's so worth it. I know it's hard to spend money sometimes. Find someplace else to do it. Just a different frame of reference. It doesn't have to be opulent. It just has to be a different frame of reference. Okay. It's not a boondoggle. Do not plan. So I've had people do this. I may have been guilty of myself. I'm getting very excited about, hey, we're going to go someplace. It's going to be super fun. There's going to be plenty of adult activities that go on. It's not that. If you need that, that's fine. And it could be a little bit of that because it just tends to be part of team health. But don't let it just be the boondoggle. It's got to also be, really about putting the time in to get ready for it. It does take 2 days, Christine, because it's a quarterly. You get a quarterly along with your fries, but you've got, and to do the other stuff, you're going to go deeper. You're going to have to think harder. It takes more time. It's like that whole notion of flow, Christine, where you can take little bites at something on a regular basis. I can churn out some stuff in little bits, but for that really deep work where I got to figure out a lot of stuff and make things, a lot of things connect, you got to put some time into it. Just let it happen through conversation. Prepare for this meeting. Christine, I teach all of my clients that they should prepare for all their meetings. You're going to get more out of the meeting if you prepare for it. Like even for your level 10, your weekly meeting, go into that. You're going to be do some sharing of your personal bests and professional bests. Know what you're going to say, because the reason for those things is team health and team encouragement. Figure out before you get there so it shouldn't be like, hey, Christine, what's your share for the day? Gosh, let me think. What? You knew you were coming. Christmas falls in the same time every year. Come on. But also in this,
we're going to be sharing how to prepare and what to ask your teams to do as well later in the presentation.
We'll go through that in detail.
You're like, well, how? Yeah.
I'll get there. I'm sorry. Yeah, but we're going to get there for sure. But every part of the meeting has some little mind framework you can do to be ahead of it. So I won't get too excited about that yet. Do I need a facilitator? Christine, I guess I've seen some people do this successfully without a facilitator. In all disclosure, at 90, we're going into our annuals coming up here this month. We're not going to have an outside facilitator. We do have 3 professional coaches on staff, however, that are going to be in the meeting, and we've all coordinated what we're going to do as far as sharing the duties of facilitating, so that nobody carries the full burden. But a facilitator, a professional facilitator who knows how to keep energy in the room, you're going to, as we go through things that go wrong, I promise you it's going to help. EOS coaches and implementers are quite familiar with coming in and just doing an annual. They're not going to try to sell you the rest of their services. That if you just need an annual, it's going to be fine. Just tell them, listen, I just need someone to help me with the annual, and they'll be just pleased as punch to work with you. But they get booked early. So if you're thinking about it, talk to a couple now. Find one that it's going to really fit with you, and I'll give you some pointers on that later on too. And I wanted to frame this up. I've used this a bunch of time in sessions. It keeps coming up when people kind of have a visualization of it. Does this work for you, Christine? No one's pushed back on it yet.
I like it. I think especially when you're thinking about the annual versus the quarterly, having this sort of perspective is
right.
Like, this is why the annual is so important, because you have a whole extra day to really step back and think about things at a larger perspective.
Right. So we talk about how important it is to learn to be a great predictor and the long-term predicting, and that really comes out in the annual. So the visualization that I've given my clients, it is this long road. It's more like the ocean where you got to navigate things that you can't see. Forget about it. But the road is an easier visual to put on screen. So your just cause or your core focus is that thing beyond the horizon. You're never going to get there. You're never going to see it and realize it. But it's directionally where you're headed. Then the next thing on your strategic plan should be that 10-year BHAG notion. That's the first thing that you can actually start to make smart. And it is the furthest out you can possibly get. That is the horizon. That is, so you want to kind of, and that's why we say it can be 5 years, can be 30 years. Sometimes it's just because, where do you want to put it? But ultimately, you'd like it to be as far out as you can possibly see, and make that your horizon. Then you pull it back in about a third of that way there, about 3 years. And in EOS, they teach people to say in 3 short years, because 3 years passes like nothing. For me, I'm ancient, so 3 years is really nothing. But for younger people, it might feel like a long time, but it's not. It goes by like nothing, like nobody's business. Those 3 years from when your baby's born till they're 3 years old, Christine, the moments seem long, but the years go by fast.
I will find out soon.
Good enough. And then 1 year, and 1 year is that once again 1 year closer. Because the reality is, in those of you who've been to one of these before have heard me say this before. Our little human brains still have only just recently evolved this whole thing with this executive function feature on the front. It's a great feature. It's for planning and it's for worrying, but it only works so good for so long. We can't really do a great job of planning further on. So we give you the structure of breaking it down into these steps. Like, okay, if I'm going to reach this 10-year thing, what do I have to get done in 3 years? And you need to be recursive with it because you don't know. But eventually come back to that quarterly plan, which is about as far as, I call this the following distance, right, Christine? Because it's like, if it's foggy out, if you pandemic comes and you can't really see far enough, you slow down and you make your quarterlies more often. You make them monthlies. But you can't have good quarterlies unless you know where the 1 year and the 3 year and the 10-year look like. You're just not going to know what to be aiming for. You're not going to have those stair steps that make it really clear what you want your outcomes are going to be, and then you can't align everybody about where that thing is. It's really just so much harder. You end up completely mired in tactical stuff if you don't have really good motivational, clarifying 10, 3, and 1 year targets.
There we go.
Okay.
Skipped one.
So doing it right's worth it. It gives everyone really clear on what needs to get done for the next year. I mean, and Christine, we've come out of our annuals feeling amazingly energized.
Yeah.
And I know my other clients have too. Like, oh my God, I'm so certain of what. Of course, it can all get blown up in a couple of months, but for that moment, you're super energized about what you can do, and you're gonna move that way. And as long as nothing gut punches you like a pandemic, then chances are you'll be able to carry that forward until you have to get back together again. Everyone gets to align about what's most important, because urgent important is the most important thing about our quarterlies and our other meetings, and it's the hardest thing. It gets you motivated to put the time and effort into achieving those goals. So if they're more clear about where, if I do these things, we're going to get over this amazing thing out in the future, that's gold. And then the ability to connect your teams and their teams to the outcome. This is the gold ring we ought to be going for. When we're motivated, we can take this down to our teams, get them motivated, get people below them motivated, and connected to the outcome. And everyone can share that strategic plan outcome, that VTO outcome. That is how we get to the point where we're leaders building leaders, and we see amazing alignment and amazing outcomes without having to manage every little bit of it.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're not doing state of the company at the end of every quarterly, at the end of your annual is definitely the time to start. So even leaving a little extra time than you maybe normally would to cover a lot of those bigger picture ideas and concepts, so everybody's ready to jump into their own departmental, makes a lot of sense.
And it's powerful. It's just so powerful. I mean, having seen it happen, I promise you, even if you're not great at it yet, it's going to be great things are going to happen if you put the time and effort in.
Yeah. So this is a little bit of a breakdown of really why day 1 and day 2 are very distinctly different and both very important in their own right.
That's right. I mean, I think so. We can talk about these bit by bit, but for those of you who don't run quarterlies and run quarterlies by the agenda that's available in 90, you'll recognize some similarities in kind of the end caps here, where we're going to come in, we're going to review objectives, make sure we're all on the same page. We're going to check in, and the check-in has got this annual look to it. But this is one of those places where every time you do a quarterly or annual, you're going to talk about being really clear about what success looks like for you to come out of the meeting and be able to share that with people. What are my ambitions for the meeting? Be clear on that with yourself. So because that's the only way you're going to really get that fulfilled. But reviewing the past year and the past quarter, like you would in any quarterly, 15 minutes is a little brisk. Christine, I got to say, I know the way Chris and I do it. I think Mark's the same way. We never get through prior quarter in that kind of time frame, because usually we're trying to make sure we've captured all the learnings from all the rocks.
Yeah, and you're creating a lot of issues in that time frame. So like when you are looking back at your past year and your past quarter, there's things you didn't get done, things you could have done better. You're adding all of that to the issues list as you go.
Yeah, so we always blow through this a little bit, and that's okay because it's good time spent. Team health, we'll talk some more about team health here, but this is really a structured exercise that there's so many things that are out there. Some of them that are part of the pure EOS package. Some of them that I know I've collected over the years. And if any of you've got some great team health exercises, definitely put those in the chat. We'd love to share those with people. But really help people connect as human beings and help know each other a little bit better. Because Christine, we don't necessarily share the way we do with our best friends, with everyone at work, and that's appropriate. We have to modulate our behavior somewhat. But a lot of like EO has a set of within those forums, they've got some very specific exercises that they take people through to make sure that they're connecting and able to share and understand and feel context when they're conversing. It makes everything run so much better. The organizational checkup, man, we'll talk some more about that, but I think it's having that way of checking in about how you're doing as a company. EOS has a pure one that's out there. I know a lot of my clients have developed their own versions of that and have ways of taking a survey to make sure they all understand how things are going. And the SWOT is only time of year we look at this is at the annual. If you haven't done it yet, plan some extra time for it. It might take more than an hour to set it up. But then reviewing it every year, an hour, it might be good. And we've had lots of people taking different takes at it. I know. It's for those of you unfamiliar with the term, actually, and I shouldn't assume, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats built right into the tool. It's got its own tab, always available there. And And it's a great place to collect stuff all during the year, Christine, where, hey, here's a new, some information about competitors, what might go into there, but all of that stuff. I know we have a Slack channel for competitors, but I was thinking, gosh, that should all have some way of automatically flowing into this thing. So we're considering all that when we do
Oh
our
yeah.
SWOT. And then your VTO review, you're going to go through every one of the 8 questions and make sure that you're really in the right place. And once again, generate issues. Then we got to go back and set that 3-year picture every year. The 3-year picture, we got to update it every year. We don't touch a 10-year target every year. We revise that when it actually is 3 years out. But up until that point, every year we have to take another slice 3 years out. So that we've got to make sure we got a great sense of our scale and scope, all of our numbers and measurables. And that's a full day, Christine. We're tired of this.
Yeah, and Joe in the chat made a great point. The time constraints can feel frustrating, and that's why it's so important to really go through the process. If you're kind of like the team leader in this case, look through that and figure out, what does my team need more or less of? Because you'll have the best idea. And this is another great reason why a coach is so helpful, because they'll help you think through this. Okay, we've done the SWOT before, so we can do 30 minutes instead of 60, and that'll give us more time for the review prior quarter, which we know is going to take a lot more time this time. You can start thinking through those things.
If you crush 100% of your rocks, maybe you can get through the prior quarter in 15 minutes. But if you've got a couple of things you had misses on, it's worthwhile to understand what happened and what you can learn from. That's valuable. But go into it, prep, look at all these things, think about them ahead of time, and encourage your team to do the same. It's a great way for everyone to start advancing their maturity around predicting, to look at this meeting and make sure, okay, what's the most important thing coming out of this step in the process? And it's okay not to know, but the more you look at it, once you've been through it a couple of times, you go, okay, when we do this, we gotta solve this. We gotta solve this. And that's going to be valuable. You're all there for a reason. If you're on the leadership team, you're all going to have important opinions, but you're not going to have access to them on the fly. It's better if you put some time in ahead of time.
Yep. And so with that day one being a lot of the focus on the reviewing and looking back at things, you're going to do a lot of issue creation alongside the team building. Day 2 is probably looking a little bit more familiar in terms of the agenda, because it lines up a lot more clearly with the quarterly, because you're doing a lot of IDS, rock setting, issue solving.
That's right. I mean, typically we come back in, the check-in is going to be what are we feeling about from last time? Then reviewing that issues list and 3-year picture, make sure we because we get, that overnight actually is so helpful, kind of reframing, because it's really a lot to handle that first day. But then coming back and refreshing that 1-year plan, once again, that's going to be the main driver of your, if you've done a great job and nothing really dramatic changes. Well, some of my teams, Christine, can ignore the front of the VTO and the quarterlies, because the 1-year plan is still the major focus. That's why we land there on the quarterlies. It's that's all we have to worry about. If we hit our planning steps for 1 year, we're going to be in great shape. And so that's why you want to want your quarterlies really aligned to that as best as possible. And then setting new rocks. I mean, by that point, we're pretty excited about getting started, to tell you the truth. And then going through and solving some key issues. 195 minutes goes by pretty quick, Christine.
Yeah. Another one where, if you need more time with issue solving, and you need to readjust the agenda, talk to the coach, think about it beforehand.
Yeah, there's obviously some play in there, but not that much. I mean, these things take time. And coming up with good strategies on prioritizing your issues, knowing which things are most important to look at. And I don't think we put anything about our numbering system in here, Christine, but there's a lot of tactics that coaches can help you with for prioritizing a long list. I know last time we were going into our annual, how many issues did we have in the long-term list?
Probably over 100.
Yeah, it was 100. I think 150 is what comes to mind for me. So
yeah.
And that's a lot. You can't really parse all those at one time. You're going to have some strategy for how you're going to approach it.
Yeah, and so when we go into 90, I'll actually show you how we mark things as rock candidates. That way, those are really easily move them up to the top of your list and start
Yeah.
moving stuff over maybe before the meeting even starts. But we'll go through customizing the agenda. So like you said, if you need to make any changes there, you can. And so then any other resources you want to include in that custom agenda, I'll walk you through what day one looks like, because it might be where you've got a set team health thing planned and you want to go ahead and just throw that in there so everybody can see it, or you took the org checkup and you want to display the results. You can put all of those custom pages within there. So let me go ahead and exit and move over to my meetings section. So in 90, when you get to the meetings page, head to the annual tab here. Before you start one up, if you click on the settings icon in the top right, that's where you're getting into this team view. So, or the agenda view. So here you can see we actually did go through and add, here's the custom section where in team health, we know we're going to cover type coach. And so here's a custom URL that we went ahead and put in there. And there's certain slides we want to go through. So we'll show you what that looks like. I'll turn back on the normal team health page just so you can see what that looks like if you were to keep it the same. So let me go ahead and save that. And then when you start a meeting, it will show with the custom agenda that you put in. So start off in the annual session, you go through the objectives. So this is just something typically your coach, or if you're the one facilitating, you'll just talk through to set the stage for the day. You'll go through your typical check-in process with each person. And then when you get into the areas like review prior year and review prior quarter, we're pulling in the specific aspects of the VTO or the rocks page in this example. So here, like I said, you're going to be talking through things. You're probably creating some issues as you're going through here. So just use the create button to go ahead and add things to your long-term list.
Fantastic.
So this is the normal team health page. So there's not a lot here because it's too open. There's so many different things that you can be doing. So that's why you really need to prep before your session of what's your plan for what you're going to do during the team health. So I know before we've just let this run and we've gone outside and, sat around a fire and, talked, and gone through our session that way. So you can kind of use this time to get up and away from your desk if that's helpful. The other thing you can do is, like we've done in here, is if there's any specific images or things you want to pull in, if everybody took Myers-Briggs and you want to create an image with everybody's results in there to talk through, that's your time to get a little bit creative with how you want to go through and display these. And here's another example of slides. I don't have access to this one, so not a great example maybe, but yeah, if you have
it does just pop right in.
Yeah.
And you'll probably go through this. And one thing that's great too is, Christine, is even on my quarterlies, if I'm doing a lot of customization in the meeting, I'll actually run it fake ahead of time, make sure all the sections come up as planned, and then just delete it at the end. So it's it's not part of the official record, and no one has to worry about it. But so you can do that. You can test your stuff and make sure it works. Yeah, and stepping out for team health, it's a great thing. We talk about getting off site, but even within the team health section, making sure you've got a way of being together that is more about being humans than about business people. I mean, we actually in our session space, the Impact Leadership Center, we actually have a room that can be configured specifically for team health exercises, where it's couches and we're looking at each other. We don't have a table between us, or so we're really just talking as people, which is what makes that the fireplace chat so valuable. I think for us, it's like we're just looking at each other as people, and in an instance where in a place where we feel like we're just friends chatting. So it really helps.
Definitely helps open people up, and even just like the day is long, break it up. If you can be outside or be in a different environment, it really helps.
Managing energy.
Yeah. The org checkup, very similar to the team health page. It's very, very standard because you guys are going out and taking this, and you're probably getting something else that has everybody's results on it. There's something else you want to talk through. So use this time to either put in a custom section or pull up whatever you used in order to get those survey results. And that way you can talk through it through that 60 minutes.
Yeah, we had some questions about it. I think we have a slide that includes some of this, but the organizational checkup there is an official one that EOS Worldwide provides. It's at, I think it's organizationalcheckup.com or something like that. But you can also do a little search and you find PDF versions of this. And quite often I have clients that customize it and make their own out of this, Christine, because there's so many great tools out there for running a survey. And it's really about flushing out, as you go from having a pure EOS implementation to having your own company operating system. It's important and valid to make sure you're checking in against what you think 100% strong looks like. And that's really the point.
Definitely.
Like, how are we making progress towards 100% strong for us?
Yeah, and Monica, if you want to post in the chat, we do have a help article that is all about the org checkup, and so it'll give you a link to the EOS Worldwide site to just go through their standard process, or an Excel doc in case you wanted to go in and customize it a little bit more. And so there's instructions on how to complete it there. So we'll link that as a resource in there.
Fantastic.
SWOT, this is available. So it pulls right up here in the annual agenda. It's also available on the VTO. So if you were to just go into your account, click on the VTO, there's a third tab where you can go in and see your SWOT anytime. It is broken up per team. So whatever you add in here, it's not like you're sharing it with the whole company. It is still like just your leadership team, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So you can go in and add these. And then when you are done building out your list, you can turn anything you want into issues. So as you need to go through that issue creation process, you can.
Yeah, people, I saw in the chat, people asking about the departmental and team versions of this. We'll cover that, but yeah, I mean, the annual process for the rest of the organization, that's coming for sure. And we enable that within 90 because it's important.
Yeah, and then these are pretty straightforward, just your VTO pages. So you've got those in here as well that you can go between. You've got your time setting, and then on conclude. We do not have a rating in here. If you do want to rate the day, some people do, I know. I would just go ahead and throw it in the meeting notes section. Any other things you want to capture, there's that show and hide notes down here in the bottom. So feel free to use that. And when you are done, if you're not just running through a test meeting and want to suspend and delete it, you would click finish day one. And so when you finish the first day, what it does is make it available to start the second day. So that's why when you start the meeting, you don't see day one and day two. It's because you actually run the full first day, finish it up, and then that same person can come in the following day and start up day two.
Yeah, and I know we've had some discussion even internally about rating the day. The other strategy that we've used to use before I was doing EOS and all that, was something called plus delta, which is the kind of the after action review, but not stated in the Department of Defense terminology, but plus delta, whereas everyone would go around the room and everyone call it at least one thing that there's a plus that worked effectively that day. You want to give some airtime to, and then deltas were things. Hey, it would be better if this was done differently tomorrow. You don't have to have a solution to the delta, just like we can all recognize it where gaps may be. The Department of Defense created this so that enlisted people could give feedback to generals, and not without retribution, without any fear of, in a non-computational way, offering feedback to the team. So plus delta is another strategy on this, also called after action review. You can Google it.
Nice. And the only thing I forgot to bring up is what I mentioned, where if you wanted to organize these, like, all right, I've got 150 long-term issues. How do I get the most important ones to the top? You can either use a numbering system, like, all right, I'm going to put anything that is a potential ROC candidate for next quarter as a number 5. And then anything that I must IDS will be a 4. You can kind of go through and number that way. And that way there's information at the front of the issue title, and then you can sort by title. So it'll end up sorting with the numbers in the front. So
Yeah.
only works if you're able to number all of them. I know another thing that I've done in the past is just put like rock candidate here. So just anything like visual and helpful that helps your team identify, obviously, when you've got a really long list. And then you can also use the column view. So you've got more visual there at one time. So it might be helpful to be able to pick out your rock candidates that way as well.
Yeah, as my coaching on that is like, listen, if you've got so many, if you only have so many long-term issues that you can fit them on one page, you're probably not doing it right. So you should have lots of issues. You should have a plate, because if you're dumping everything out of your head, all of your ideas, especially if you got a visionary, for goodness sake, the visionary is constantly coming up with 20 things every meeting, right? Of which 2 of them are good. Put all 20 in here because context might change and 3 of them become good. But let them take them off at the appropriate time. But that way, all the urgent, important things do bubble to the top and we all consider it, but you got to capture everything here. So if you've only got 3 or 4 long-term issues, it's time to go back and look at all your stuff and let's be open and honest and get some more trust going in the room, because I promise there's more.
Yes, and that probably leads into, I think we're going to be talking about the prep work next. So I know thinking through your long-term issues is definitely a big part of what we want to do before the session even starts.
That's right. I mean, I think, and in my experience, I mean, even amongst the 3 coaches that are on the leadership team at 90, we all have different specific things we tell our clients to do to prep for these meetings. And quite often they're different per client, because we know if they're a long-term client, we know where they are. But in almost all instances, we're sending them out emails. And Christine, I actually have stopped sending emails. I put it actually in 90.
Nice.
I give them to-dos in 90. I or my assistant, Carolina, who I also make an implementer in this in their system, so I can say, Carolina, go put the to-dos in there, so that everyone has them. So that way I know, oh, I lost that in my email. No, you didn't. It's right there.
Right there. It's on your to-do list.
It's on your to-do list. Yeah. But completing the org checkup or whatever you use is a way of kind of quantifying your progress and giving so many people to look at. Think about rocks for the upcoming quarter and changes to the 3 and 1 year plan. I mean, those are the most important things you want to come out of with this. You should always know that I need a more solid 3 and 1 year plan coming out of this. Whatever we had last year, maybe it was good. How can I make it 1%, 2%, 5% better than last year? So it gives more clarity, more specificity, and easier to build rocks out of it. And that's really the thing. We find this all the time, even with our team, Christine, where we'll go back and we'll look at our 1 year planning elements or our 3 year picture elements and going, what was it? What was that about? Well, wait. Yeah. And if you got to listen to that hesitation, listen to that confusion, and go, how do we make this, when we do our 1 year planning this year, how do we make it better so that next year I'm super clear about what my rocks are for the quarter? I mean, I actually in charge, and one of my clients this last week was saying, as you put that up there, I think you already know which rocks you're going to have. Put them in there. Put phase 1, phase 2, just put them in there, because Christine's going to and her team is going to all this work of giving you an extensive place to put notes forever. Guys, if you haven't seen Christine's, she scribes for the 90 leadership team. Her descriptions and capturing of what goes on in the meeting, it's a work of art. You have bullets and bolds and like all the stuff. It's beautiful.
I do love
going through that,
adding,
enhancing it ahead of time is a great thing to do. And then this is also time when you start thinking about where your team's going to help with that stuff, because that you're going to want to take that into the leadership team. And we've actually initiated at 90 this year. We're in advance working with our teams to start refreshing what would right now be our 2 year picture and 1 year plan. And like, what in here what can we do to enhance this so we know that, so I, as the leader of this team, can take it into the leadership team and better make that correct.
Yeah. So just for clarity around that, we made it as a to-do, I guess, a couple meetings ago. So we gave ourselves like, 6 weeks of prep time, but everybody takes it to do. It's like, hey, get with your department or do what you need to do at the departmental level to really think through your 1 year. And then instead of 3-year at the department level, we do 2-year. So think about your goals, work with your team to flush those out. And that way we can bring them into the annual session and think about what should get bubbled up. It's just a great prep way, and it encourages you to bring in other team members too. So it's great to do ahead of time.
Yeah, and then I love this point here, Christine, because there are lots and lots of team health activities that you can go do, but it's best to apply the right medicine to the right situation, right? So do the diagnostics, talk to some people, find out what other people have been doing. I know we've been talking about we've got to be we got to start aggregating these things for people because there's so many things out there, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. But make sure it's great to think about them in terms of what will they do for this team? What will they do for this team? Okay.
All right. Hopefully you guys can still hear me well. I just got a bad internet sign here, so you'll have to.
I got you.
All right, good. Wave the red flag or something if anything goes wrong. So I want to go into 90. I already showed you a little bit about this, but let's talk a little bit about the long-term issues list, the rocks, and the SWOT. So let's jump out of here. So long-term issues list, I already told you guys a bit about what we do here as far as marking things as rock candidates and or numbering them. I love the numbering system. It does mean that when somebody adds something in, if it's not numbered, you might need to spend a little bit of time before you start issue solving and just make sure all of them are numbered because it works best when they all are. So here you can see we've done that. So when you're adding issues in before the meeting even starts, think about, is this a potential rock for next quarter? Is this just something I want to talk about the team with everybody and agree to how you guys are going to be adding those in here before the session even starts?
Yeah,
so
and
that's just. Go ahead.
Even once we do that, the discipline we have after that is we have to remember to go back through and review those numbers. So the first time you do it, it's a bit of a chore. As I teach my clients how to do it, they've been self-implementing. Like, hey, here's a way of using 90 for this. It just makes it easier to manage a long list. But then you got to go back through next time, and as your prep is like reviewing the numbers. So, like for instance, if 3 means we'll talk about it next quarter, then you make sure you look at all the 3s and make sure which ones do I want to make a 4, so I know I'm talking about it today. So come up with the definitions of those numbers and then sort, and then make sure that every quarter, every year, you're going back and looking up and making sure that the right things are in the right place. Christine's. Poor Christine. I think she's come to a halt. All right.
Jim, you want to go off topic until Christine gets back on?
I do, baby. So, she's back.
Yeah, she's coming back. There we go.
All right, there you go. Hi, Christine.
Hey, sorry.
These things happen.
Connected. Yeah, there we go. All right. So after issues, over to SWOT and just show you where that is on the VTO, if I'm still picking back up in the right spot.
Yep.
So on the VTO, over strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So this is exactly what shows up in that annual planning agenda. If you needed to add to it or look at it before the session starts, this is just where you would find it. But again, you're going to be reviewing this and it's going to come up in that annual agenda as well.
And this is a great one to enhance as much as possible in advance. Put links in there, links to articles, and also, if there's really important stuff that you're linking to, send it in advance to everybody. Give everyone to review this thing. That's it, because you want everyone having the right frame of mind going into this. Just like we do during implementation, we have people read books or read articles. It's a great way to go into this meeting, and we've got a very long book we're supposed to read. All right, but we have Christine. It's a weighty tome about being a CXO. But you know,
3 weeks left.
I carry it with me everywhere. So it goes. We'll see how we do. I'm scanning a little bit.
Let's see. And then obviously you'll want to do your prep for customizing your agenda, getting the team health information in there. And the final thing I was just going to mention is Rock. So going through as you get things done, you're marking them as done. Anything that you want to put comments on, feel free to come in here and do that as you're getting towards the end of the quarter, just so all of that's wrapped up as well.
Yeah, I learned from one of my clients that they use the comment section to do a bit of a narrative, a final narrative on a rock. So ahead of the quarter, end of the quarter, they'll actually do a final, hey, just saying this is the things we learned. So this is like the so what of the whole rock, which is something that we ask about going in, you know, when I go through with a team, I say, what did we learn about this rock? What's the most important? They just start doing that ahead of time because I know Jim's going to ask about it. So let's get our homework done ahead of time, which is fantastic. Think about it ahead of time. That's a much more productive meeting.
Love it. And I know we had a great question come in. If SWOT is designed really for real-time additions by the leadership team, so during the session, or if it's more designed for adding items before the session starts. I would say probably both. You can do either. I would do some prep work, at least looking at it, but using it real time in the session. I know that's what we did the first time we built it out, and now it's just kind of there. So it's easier for us to go through, iterate, put more resources in there and review together as well.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of client companies that are going to be running EOS, a lot of the team members are not necessarily, they don't know what SWOT means. I have to define it quite often for people. So it's not a bad thing to, at the quarterly before your first SWOT, and this is what I've taken on doing with my clients. It's like, hey, I'm gonna spend tool time talking about what a SWOT meeting looks like and what the SWOT is, just to give them some advanced learning so they can put things in advance. It's much more valuable. Every piece of this agenda is more valuable if you put some time in ahead, just to get your mind wrapped around it. So it's not, you're not looking at it fresh when you walk into the meeting. And any notes you can put in there, there's nothing wrong. It's all software. It's just little bits. So we can like, hey, I guess it's not really a strength. Take it out. No problem. No harm, no foul. But starting to accumulate this stuff makes for a more valuable session.
Definitely. All right, so let's jump in and talk a little bit about team health now. There we go. So this is an example of a couple different exercises that you can go through. Is that right, Jim?
That's right. So, I mean, in the toolbox that EOS talks about, there are a couple of things that are the standard parts of what you might consider for team health. I know my one thing for the year, and I meant to have it up so I can read it directly. But we gave everybody one, things last year, and what everyone like going around like, hey Jim, you're great at this and this. The one thing I can change to make things better, to make our relationship better, to make us work better together, is for you to do this. And mine unfortunately did not involve eating more chocolate. It was I had to pause and listen more. Because as Christine knows, I can form an opinion on absolutely everything. But I don't necessarily always need to give my opinion. I can pause and listen and wait for the appropriate time for my opinion. And I appreciate that. I mean, it's been a beneficial for me in my personal life, and also and I work with a team in 90. So it's a great thing. And then we check in on that. It actually becomes in our headlines. It's on our leadership team headlines, and we check in on a regular basis. How are we doing on everybody's one thing?
Yep. So we went ahead and added it as a headline after our annual last year, and we just never check it off to close it. So it's just always there every week. We'll skip it a lot of weeks, but if we need to open it up, it's right there. I know mine was to delegate more. So
Yes.
now that I am pregnant and about to be on maternity leave, I am forced into delegation. But I like to think I was doing it before that too. So,
You were doing a good job. You were doing a good job.
5 questions next.
Yeah, so the 5 questions, and it's just a set of questions. And you know what? This is one of the things I've told my clients. It doesn't have to be the same 5 questions every year. You can use the 5 questions every year, but the 5 questions, and I won't give them away here. You can Google them and take a look at them, see if they fit for you. But it really gives people a chance to talk about their history and what's valuable to them in a new light. And there's always 5 more things. One of my clients, in their sales team, they told us about it's RFI. Every time I talk to you, I have to request. There has to be a request for at least 3 pieces of information. Right. That's how I constantly enhance the relationship, enhance my understanding. This fits into that. So what are some things I need to know about you? Like I think we learned about that half of our team is really into grilling meat. Christine, I think that we learned that last time.
We did learn that, yeah.
Lots of great conversations about flesh grilling. And we talked about everyone's first job and what their job experiences were, and that was really that is really interesting. Well, where's everyone's work life begin? But I'd say I'm not going to hone in on any 5 questions. Coming up with 5 questions that everyone has to answer that gives you some sense of their background is a great way to go.
Yeah, and make it personal. I mean, it's time to open up, so getting into like where they're from, families. I know we've done all of that before, and I always appreciate hearing more about that because you get to know the person a lot deeper. But those 2 are definitely good ones to Google, along with, kind of everything on this list. Whatever sounds interesting, just throw it in Google and you can kind of get some more information and figure out what you want to start going with.
Yeah, I mean, if you type in EOS 5 questions, you're gonna get it right away. So someone asked for the link, but I mean, we don't want to get anyone in trouble, but you can find it. It's out there. So individual assessments, Christine, I actually get asked by my clients all the time. They're like, where does this fit into, your thinking? Is our assessments valid? And my answer, I thought might be beneficial here. I don't think any of these are magic. None of these give you the full out. You don't know somebody by knowing they're Colby, but first. Oh, because this is the type of meeting this is, it doesn't give me my ENTJ 8443 next to my name. But people look at that and go, oh, I understand. That does become at least 2 hands on the elephant, and so the more you do these things, and I encourage you to do more, because you'll learn more about yourself, you'll learn more about others. I had a client tell me that they actually fell in love with the 5 voices, which I hadn't even heard of. It's by Giant does this, and it's really about. Yep, thank you, Simon. Simon sharing the link. Good job. And it was for them, it was transformational about how they talk to each other and how they're able to interact. And amen, brother. I mean, that'll make everything much better. I know my print integrate. Some of these are harder to display. Like we can't. I know you have your print is 338, Christine. Do you remember what that means?
It means I am highly competitive and strong and self-reliant, I believe are the 2 key phrases with those 2.
Yeah, and some other time we'll let Christine talk about her extensive sports career. I'm a 1-5. I like to make things right, and I like to know the right answers. So those are great ones. It take a little bit more interpretation, right? You have to spend more time interpreting them. It isn't quite so obvious to everybody. I think where Colby is the simplest one for everyone. That's why it goes along with EOS so well. It's like, boom, it's so simple, so basic, but it does tell you some things. Myers-Briggs has been around for a long time. People understand it. Mark has a great set of presentations on how to interpret those. Like 70% of the world is, I guess, is it IJ? I don't remember. And then predictive index and culture index, I put those in here together, Christine. I think they're great. I think they're probably complicated for a lot of teams to understand because they do involve graphing and 2 standard deviations past the mean and things like that.
Right. Yeah. And the thing I like most about really all of these is it's not like trying to put people into a box or like, oh, you're just not good at that. You can't do that. It's, I know for our team at least, like we've maybe done one of these every annual. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think back
Yeah,
to
I think
it, but
the last couple of years we certainly have. We added print last year.
yeah, it's just like a way to talk about ourselves differently, bringing in personal experiences, talking about, what we've struggled with over the last year, like, or what we've succeeded at. So it's just a different way to like frame maybe the same things that you would be talking about in the one thing or five questions as well.
Yeah, and during this time, it's a great opportunity to really question yourself. I mean, we're questioning the direction of the team. We're questioning so much of parts of the organization, and at 90 we talk about work with a capital W. This notion of are you doing work that's meaningful, that gets you to self-actualization? And part of that is just knowing who you are deeply, understanding who you are in a deeper way. And the more you can do that for your teams, the better chance you have of everyone getting to that place of self-actualization.
Yeah. Let's see. And I think we've got two more on here.
Yeah. So the 5 dysfunctions of team. If you're not familiar with Pat Lencioni, Geez, Pete, go out and read that one. It's a great way to get to a more healthy approach to teams. I know I've taken it and taught it in dozens of sessions. I'm not taking anything away from it. It's great. Definitely include that one, but you can find lots of stuff on that. The trust score, I want to talk about this one, Christine, because I know we've added this to our annual. This is part of our team health, because as you might imagine, everyone, at 90 we've done most of the basic stuff already. We still have new team members that come along, but we recognize too that there was a lot of value. One of our coaches, Chris Snyder, who's also our leads corporate development for us, read this paper by Mark Abbott, our founder, on the math of trust, and this notion of a trust score equaling character times connections times competency. And it's a fascinating article. I've got the link down here. I'm hoping someone grabbed it and to drop it into the chat as well.
Steven's on it.
Thank you, Stephen. And Mark Abbott Global is full of amazing articles, because Mark Abbott is a crazy man, but he has really some amazing stuff to talk about. I mean, he thinks about this stuff all the time. He is a visionary in the classic sense. But Chris has been able to teach this in a number of his sessions, and he's using it with annuals all this year with all of his clients. And so he's going to teach us how to do the same thing. And next year I'm going to do the same thing. I love it. But getting to being a high trust organization is what works, my friends. I promise you'll run better when you get to a high trust organization. So many other, now that I know about this, so many of the things I recognize when my clients say, I'm struggling with this in my company, it's like, because you're not really a high trust organization yet. They think that there's a lot of trust, but what I find is that, Christine, is they're nice, as opposed to
Right.
They're really to challenge each other, because there's not enough trust. There's not enough trust that if I challenge you, that you're not going to feel hurt, that you're not going to feel like it's hard. It's hard work to get to high trust. We're not wired for it. We're wired for flight or flight. Accept that. It's fine. But if we're going to create a great organization, which we want to make it almost easy to do, we have to get to a high place of trust. That's my diatribe on trust today.
Love it. Yeah. And definitely check out that link if that's interesting to you. I know there's a lot of other stuff on Mark Abbott Global about trust. So
Yeah.
Even within that article, I'm sure there's links to a couple other resources.
You could study for your PhD in trust on Mark Abbott Global. That's all the citations be right back there.
Yeah.
So I did collect these two things. So there is organizationalcheckup.com. I think that's probably been in the chat already. And if you wanted to, I know we've got some resources out there. If you just want to Google it without following our resource, that's fine. I checked this today just to make sure it's still, because I think EOS doesn't really want you to use the PDF, but they're out there all over the place. Internet never dies, guys.
Yeah.
And then the notion here is identify areas of improvement. When we teach this at the beginning of teaching about EOS, is the notion is to get up to 100% strong in all the 6 key components. However you define those key components, but EOS is a very specific way. But we're going to be super happy about getting to 80%, because that's about as far as we can get. The problem is that sometimes we get really good at one thing or another real early. depending on what type of company you are, it may be really good. You might be really great at data. You're gonna be super fantastic at data. You're gonna be great at people, or you're gonna be great at process. That's one. That's a tough one. Hey, we're fantastic at process. We got everything documented in a brilliant way. Wow. But you're only like a 20% at everything else. So you're a 20%. That's all you get. You are your weakest link. So you think about it like a bicycle tire, Christine, right? That's what I always say. If you're not strong in all six, you're gonna go ka-tunk, ka-tunk, and it's just not what you want to be. So getting to that place and saying, hey, we're weak in that, that's got to be an important thing for you. If you're only going to take advantage of the other ones when you get other one figured out. And that is part of the Gino's genius in coming up with the 6 key components. You do have to get all 6 of them figured out. So.
Yeah. And then you're creating long-term issues, like anything that is like really urgent, you're making sure you get into that on the rocks list. So I think it's important to review, and I guess speak a little bit to who's filling out the work checkup, because oftentimes you definitely want the people in the room doing it, but are you having the entire company fill that out before the annual meeting?
Absolutely right. I mean, I have a client who just sent me one, and they've been doing it quarterly with the leadership team, but they had a time where they sent out everyone in the organization, and they were shocked. They were just shocked by some of the results, and some of the questions, and you get the results based on individual questions, and some of them were like, okay, that's an emergency. We got to go solve that right away. And so we have to develop a rock around that someone has to go solve that problem right away, or at least understand the problem better, which is quite often how these things work, where the first quarter is going to be about, I just had to understand why we ended up with this thing. And then what to do about it is the follow-up rock.
Definitely. Yeah, I think you end up getting very different or more honest results when everybody's doing it, because it's like everybody in the room could think vision's communicated great, but then everybody takes it in the company and you start realizing like, oh, maybe there's more gaps than we thought.
Yeah, I mean, and gosh, we talk about in other meetings, Christine, but the 7 times rule, how you call out, please don't miss these very simple basic tips that really make a big difference of whether or not you've actually done a great job of communicating your vision, which is a place that people find out gaps, because the leadership team hears it all the time and they get great at it, but it doesn't really work until everybody's there.
Definitely.
So I accumulate just a couple of things here that I've seen people struggle with when they come out to the end and they go, we do plus delta, what can we do better? Managing the energy with breaks, treats. Hey, Christine, great treats matter. I know we've done this in Mark's room. Mark does a great job putting together interesting treats every time, in my opinion. And changes of venue. So understanding that over that 2 days, sitting in that same room is probably not a great idea. That you probably need to be able to move around, change the perspective just a little bit, and suddenly everyone feels a little bit more refreshed. And one of the things I do with all my clients, even on full day sessions, is I make them leave the session room. Like, hey guys, we're taking a 15-minute break. I want all of you out of here. If you please try to go outside, breathe outside air, look at birds for a couple of minutes, because otherwise you're going to be exhausted. Because it will be tiring. If you aren't tired, you aren't doing it right. And I have this notion of fit, Christine, that I know Chris and I have been talking about a lot over the last couple of years, is trying to find the right facilitator, the right coach at any right time. And so I want to phrase it this way: pick a facilitator with an optimistic fit for your team, because the wrong person is just going to be annoying over 2 days. And you don't want that. That takes energy. And someone that's not optimistic, that can't like pull you along and excite you about what you're about to do, is going to be draining. And you don't need that. Even if you can't recognize it, you don't want it. You don't want that. And Chrissy, it is a bit of a boondoggle sometimes. People party. It's okay. Just push back start time and don't skip on it. And don't go crazy. I mean, come on. It's good to have fun together, but there's work to do.
Yeah. And another one that I know Joe posted earlier after we said it, but really think about who the scribe is during your meeting.
Good job,
like that
Joe.
is a key person. Yeah. So he really called that out. You have to have a scribe. I know we talked about it earlier. Like I'm usually the one in 90 taking notes, doing things for the team. Like have a dedicated person where they understand that's their role before the session, just so that everything is really well documented.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I mean, the reality is that it's not just, oh, you're not being the secretary. The scribe is the historian of the session, and without good scribing, you don't really know what happened, and you're going to end up with to-dos and issues that you don't understand. And so, we never have that with Christine. If Christine's entering stuff, we get it. She's capturing so much and also participating. She's magical. I don't know. You can't have her. She's ours. I'm just saying.
All right. And I know we already went over a little bit of this. So starting day 1 and day 2, rock review, setting new rocks. I know I didn't start day 2 yet. So if we just want to quickly pop in there and see what day 2 looks like, again, I'm going to the annual tab. Yeah. So we'll start up day 2. Your agenda is saved together. So when you run an annual session, like in your past annual meetings, I can go into those details and I'll have day 1 and day 2 all in the same one. So it's not like you're having 2 separate meetings, they combine into one. And that also means at the end, I'm going to get my recap email. It's going to have any rocks, issues, all of that stuff from the combined 2 days instead of just one of them. So very similar intro with objectives and check-in. And then we're getting into, reviewing our issues list, looking at the 3-year, going into 1-year plan. So a lot of this is what you'd expect again, just going through the sections, and it's auto-filling your information in here. So when it comes to rock creation, we are still seeing the long-term issues list because you've been building this over the last day and a half. As you want to create rocks, you'll right-click, create a rock. It opens it up so that you can add the details in. And then you can go over to the rocks page and decide how much time you want to spend in here really going through and making a couple of them smart, adding the details before you move on to your IDS.
Yeah, and I Christine, I want to give a shout out to the 2 features on here that are new, that are particularly valuable that people don't find. Now, first one's 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
And the other one's the combining of issues.
Yeah, so 1, 2, 3, you can click, and then that opens it up so that I can just click on these items and auto sort those to the top. So if there's specific things I want to move to the top of the list, it's an easy way other than just the right click and move to top and bottom of list. So it really helps you narrow down to 3 items. And then merge is the second one that Jim mentioned. So if I've got, here's a good example. It looks like I added this issue twice. Maybe there's unique information in both of them because I just didn't realize that it was on the list initially. So what I can do is right click merge into another issue. So it'll actually take this issue that I have open and combine it into this one. So it asks if I'm sure if I want to do that, just in case. When I do merge it, it crosses off the one and it puts all of the information combined into this one. So an easy way to pull 2 things together if you're finding, through that keep, kill, combine process, that's your combine step.
And both those things, you're going to need both of them if you're using the software to run your meeting. They're going to help you deal with a long issues list, and you want a long issues list because you want to make sure everything's on there. So, practice with those. Once again, you can do it. Practice a little bit. Create yourself some dummy issues and combine them if you got concern. But it's fun stuff.
Yeah.
I get applause when I show people that, Christine. So like,
nice.
Oh my God,
there
I can't believe we have that. That's amazing. It's like, I know. I take full
Love
credit.
it. And it's available on short-term issues too. So you can do that on long-term or short-term with just merging 2 items together. Next steps will show you any to-dos that you created during the day or still have on your list. And then when you do get to conclude.
Oh no. Oh, Christine. You get to conclude, you get a chance to rate the meeting. And guys, my favorite part of this is there's 2 arrows right above where it says absent, where we shuffle all of the team members so we go in different orders. Actually I got an ooh yesterday in my meeting with that one, Christine.
I love that.
Especially
Yeah.
teams that are not nicer than they are high trust. They're like, there's a lot of groupthink, and they knew this team knew it. Like, yeah, we got a groupthink problem. Okay, yeah, let's change which order we put them in. And I always leave the integrator for the last, because it's good practice, my friends, because everyone's going to key off of that one. So make everybody go first, except for that person.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then you will send your recap email, click finish day 2, and it'll take you back out to your main page, throws it on your list where you can go in and see the details. So you've got all that there as well.
Fantastic.
All right. So beyond the leadership team.
Yeah, so this is the last thing. So
how departments
yes,
are doing.
yeah, so I saw some questions about this. You do want every team in the organization to eventually have rocks and have to-dos and have their own 3-year, 1-year plan and whatnot. So the software already has it in there. You can go look at the VTO and look at it from the view of any team. And that's just departments, but any team that you make. And you can think about some of those teams should be departments. Some of them are just going to be projects you're working on. But it's not a bad way to think about if it's a longer term team that has some planning to do. Break it down into those 3-year, 1-year, and quarterly buckets, and go through the same exercise of trying to build that up. Because then that becomes a great reference point for finding stuff that has to go into the leadership team. And so and it's recursive, my friend. So you're gonna set that after the leadership team is done, and then the leadership team might want you to refresh it before they go back and do theirs. So, and that's fine. That's really what it takes to do good planning, because we just, once again, we don't plan that far out very well, and things change over time, and we learn more, and we can enhance what we had in there. And you want to make sure you're doing the most urgent, important stuff. You want to make sure your efforts are being applied to the best place. And the only way to do that is to have a long-term plan that you really understand and believe in and align to. So yeah, every team is annual. I'm sorry, I wasn't reading my bullet points. I just want to go on, but so only leadership team needs 2 days. Everybody else can have shorter meetings, Christine. How short depends. But I know, I've seen, as you go down maybe a 1 day and go down to 4 hours, like typically quarterlies I see go from a full day for the leadership team. I know with coaching, we decided we had to go to 6 hours because we need that much time. We like to going on maybe 4 than 2. So, but you can just see what it gets shorter, because typically you have less rocks to talk through, one, and you have less sticky issues to deal with. So that's where the time comes out.
Yeah.
Yep. And then here's just some notes on timing here. If you haven't started doing state of the company meetings yet, that's a good kickoff for the next stage. So the leadership team does something quarterly or annual. Then you have a state of the company meeting where you present, hey team, this is how we did last year. This is how we did last quarter. This is what we think is important for the next year. This is what we think is important next quarter. And then everybody can key off of that and go build their plans based on that information. And hopefully inspired, right, Christine?
Hopefully.
Okay.
And I know when scheduling, it might be a little bit weird with your company. I know we try and do state of the company as soon as we can after an annual or a quarterly, and then wherever the departmental ones fall, they fall. So if it comes before state of the company, it's fine. If it's after, it's fine. But trying to get that out as soon as you can, just to
it's only
communicate.
weird the first time. After that, it's still recursive. It's still like, what are all the inputs that pull information as much as possible, and you do the best you can every time. It gets better, quarter over quarter.
It does.
All right.
And so wrap up, we're going to go over to our issues list. I know you guys have been posting some things. We've already answered a few, but I know there's a couple bigger ones that we didn't pick up. So if you've got anything you want to talk about, throw it in the chat right now. We're adding those to our issues list. And then we will be sure to send out, I know somebody asked about the slides for the webinar. We can include those in the recap email. I know there's a couple links in here. So we'll make sure to include any resources that we've talked about today in that recap email that goes out along with this recording as well. So head over to my issues list that's been building here.
What's amazing to me is how well Stephen and Monica do at Keep, Kill, and Combine and solving stuff before they get to us.
Yes, it's been so helpful. All right, so since we've got 4 on here, I figure we just roll down the
Let's take them in order.
list.
That's good.
So what comes first, goals or finance? I saw this come through at the beginning, and it's a great question.
Yeah, and we do ask, everyone deals with this, right? Because you're not going to have, like yesterday I was helping a team for the first time where they were actually a self-implementer, want to take on 90 to move forward, and they were used to setting their rocks due at the end of the quarter, the financial quarter, and there's nothing wrong with that particularly. You just have to agree on how you're going to approach it. I've got some companies, I'll give you some examples, and then you can decide what logic is best for you. Some companies like to do their strategic planning, which is what the quarterlies and annuals are, before they get to the end of the quarter. So they can start the financial quarter off with a clear sense of what has to happen. Now, let's remember that when quarters start and end is an arbitrary point in time. That they're not, we come up with an agreement about what the end of the financial quarter is. It doesn't mean that that's some magical time where there's amazing new dollars on the other side of that thing. It's really a continuous play. So if you want to report your absolute accurate quarterly income and revenue and profit in your quarterly, then you have to have the quarter closed before you can have your quarterly. But it mostly doesn't matter, because most of my clients know pretty close what their quarter is going to look like 2-3 weeks ahead of when the quarter closes, right? They're tracking it week by week, and that's why it's not as important. It's not critically important that it's one side or the other. Same thing works for the annual, and that's why it also doesn't matter so much whether the departmental quarterlies are right after or a month after the leadership ones. You do want to key off of what the leadership team's doing, but ultimately you catch back up at the next quarter, right? And you take new fresh input and keep going. So it's really about coming up with your own approach. I also have companies that do, hey, we're going to do and this is something we do it at 90. We do our quarterly, and we have a rough idea what revenue is going to be because it's the nature of our company, and we just say, well, it looks like we're on track or off track for revenue. And that's how we just accepted it. Like, we're 2 weeks wrong, do the rough math, looks like we're good, or we're going to be off by this much, or we're going to be above this much. And that's good enough for deciding how we did in the quarter, how we did in the year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've seen it play out always, Christine.
And I know for us, we don't necessarily follow the exact, quarter model as it goes, like for the financial year. Like, we go based off of when our next quarterly is. So when we're putting in what's our goal for the number of companies using 90, we don't say like, oh, December 31st, it'll be this, because well, our next quarterly isn't on December 31st. So we're thinking
Right.
about it more in terms of like, when is our next meeting, and doing all of our goals based off of that, so we don't run into that situation. So it might be something to consider for you guys as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that I help with my clients, it's not EOS, but is always a good idea, is coming up with that financial model, that simplified financial model, quarter over quarter, month over month, however you want to do it, that plays you out over that 10-year period. Like, what are the basic inputs and basic outputs and dependencies, so I can start making decisions about my business and forecasting better and better. And then what are the ratios going to be? Oh, it looks like that ratio's a bit off. I can fix it and have it cascade out. So we're working on it at Impact Architects. We help people do it, but we haven't had a tool on it yet, because it's important and it helps with that.
Yeah.
Work checkup.
All right. Checkup. Personal preference, I guess, on the first one, huh?
Well, listen, I mean, I get hesitancy to use an EOS Worldwide resource if you're not interested in working with an implementer. Heard. Like I said, that's why I talk about there are PDFs out there. That's why we have a spreadsheet. There are lots of similar resources available out there, but if you're aligning to EOS, you probably want to think about it in terms of your 6 key components. That's your model. We're supporting other models now within the software, so there are other surveys. I don't have a great other resource yet, Christine, like a completely separate, equally well thought out resource that goes with this, but I think it's just good to have something in there, and like I said, there's lots of ways of slicing that egg right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the help article that we posted in there earlier, that really gives you the link to the Google Doc. So if you did want to use something that was completely custom to you, you have that. Yeah. Team health survey. I like the idea of including something in the software that helps people like choose really what they should be doing, or working through a list of different things that they've already done.
Yeah,
I
think
that's
it's a
probably
great
an
call
opportunity
out.
for us in the future.
Yeah, I know. We were Christine and I were talking earlier that we need to start aggregating all the ones we know about. So if you want to tell us about a great team health exercise and what it's good for, maybe that's a blog article we can get going here pretty quickly that give people advice. It would be hard to cover it in this format in any great detail, but I think it's a good idea to call out for a resource, Simon.
Yeah, hopefully it's very specific to what your company needs, like right now in this season, or based on like where your team members are, how new people are. But yeah, I love the idea of helping people think through that a little bit more. So in the meantime, I would say if you're getting your annual facilitated, definitely call a coach and ask. So
yeah. Simon's in Malta. I didn't even know where Malta was till I met Simon. So thanks, Simon, for helping my geographical knowledge.
This looks like another good feature request. So coming through, thinking about profiles for people, just
Right.
like more interaction on the team health side during the meeting. So I really like this idea. And you can add, I'll go there now. You can add people's
So when she catches up,
strength, if you do want to put any of these into the software, you can do that on the directory page as well. Sorry, I think my internet might be
definitely put other. That's right. We put other stuff in there, but I'll give Simon the call out. So I mean, he actually does teach the giant tools, which include the 5 voices, and which is specifically about helping with that very topic. I mean, so my client actually in Laramie, Wyoming. That have been very taken by this, they recognize that they can't have certain people start the conversation because they will override everybody else. So there's great insight in all of that, and that's why I say there's like having more profiles like that, and then but yeah, I mean to have that kind of thing trigger who have standards about what order things should be done in is not a bad plan at all, Simon, because you can know there can be a right answer, and that's in general with the software, we don't want to force people to do something that doesn't make sense, but that letting people have a preference, I think that's a good idea, isn't it, Christine?
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. Creating to-dos and meetings. Do you track the to-dos in the annual meeting, or do you move it to a different meeting? So it actually works just like your level 10. So it's not like I have to-dos specific to my annual meeting. It's just during an annual meeting, a to-do might come up. So it still goes to your normal to-do list. It still lives on the team. You're still going to see it on your
Yeah, so that's to fish what Christine's saying. It's still going to live on your My 90 page as part of your overall to-dos. I mean, your accountability for getting it done is still that same team. So if the leadership team annual is where the to-do comes from, it'll show up on the leadership team L10 as a to-do for you. And so because that is one of the few things we have for a solve on IDS. So great way to keep up with that. And there's plenty to do, so it should come out of your annual. But once again, it just shows up as your regular part of your L10. Hey, Steven, are we?
Yep, I'm jumping in here too. I'll share my screen so we can
Okay, great. Thanks,
keep
Steve.
rolling here.
Yeah,
Yeah, there we go. Let's
Little bit
see. You
left.
see my issues now, right?
right. I do.
All right, cool. So we just talked about creating the to-dos. So doing rocks in real time. We kind of answered this part of the question about can they be columnized? That's something we're still working on, but whether or not they can be input by an individual in real time. Do you want to take a swing at that? Because I feel like I know the answer, but maybe
Well,
Christine's back and she can help out.
Yeah, so I mean, just from a coaching perspective, I mean, we do create rocks in real time. I mean, we're doing it together because a rock is an agreement on a priority amongst the team members there. So deciding what are the most urgent, important things and how to allocate any one users or one team member's time, the 20% of the time it's not part of their standard work, to that is part of what we're all working on together. The sequence that I coach to that I think is most common is we're going to create an 80% version of that rock in real time in the meeting, and then that person's going to go away and smarten up that rock, make it more understandable and recognizable with the rest of the team, and then at the next level 10, everyone's going to say, okay, yes, that is, you've gotten the essence of that rock, Jim, that's right. We all understand what done looks like, and you've built out your milestones to that rock so that we'll know whether you're actually making progress on it or not. Now, that's the process part of it. But Christine, we also do now have or coming out soon, the ability to have multiple people in the same meeting at the same time that could be typing stuff in. And would that work for rock creation?
Yeah, it would. I actually just got confirmation from the team this morning that we're finally pushing everything out tonight to hopefully be ready. And then we'll email everybody on Tuesday that is a part of our beta program that they can use real-time meetings. So what that means is like you can go into a weekly and collaborate in the description of the rock. You guys can add issues at the same time and they'll show up on the list. So it'll be a much easier way to go through and like everybody's contributing to one thing at one time.
It will create a new facilitation standard within the meeting. Like, when do I want you doing that versus just being 100% focused on what's going on? I mean, there's no accident that the original EOS implementers, and some of them still today, don't want any technology in the room. Is because they don't want your attention diverted from what's going on. The unimind that we're trying to create in that room. But that said, right, the ability now that we're all not in the same room, that we're, especially because we're on these Zoom meetings, having ability of everyone to kind of be able to add stuff, it'll be an opportunity, but don't plan to overuse it. Don't plan, I think there's still value to having a great scribe in the meeting who takes care of certain things. And but you will be able to have someone say, yeah, we're taking a break. Would you go get in the meeting and do this thing while we're on a break or whatever, and or just be able to answer a question, drop in a link. Oh, I just found this link. Let me drop it in here. Boom, it shows up for everybody. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and especially when we do release to everybody, once it goes through, like, I want to leave it in beta for at least a couple weeks just to make sure people get their hands on it and give us some feedback. But we'll definitely run like a best practices webinar so that we can talk through some of those things that each company is going to have to think about how it works for them individually with how they want people in there and interacting with their computers. But yeah, Brian, everyone, if you want to join beta, feel free to just throw a chat in the bottom right corner and they can get you set up right now and send you like a quick list of really what that means for your company too moving forward.
Yeah, and
so, yeah,
let me know if I didn't answer the question properly. As far as, was it the columnized version of that? Is that just about having a different view of rocks? Is that with that, like each of the data elements being in columns?
Yeah, I was thinking about how we look at long-term, or short-term, both in column view. And that's how I interpreted the question.
I see. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Once again, I've given you
I like the idea.
Yeah. Once again, I've given you a lot of input on things you didn't really care about. So I should listen more.
Christy, do you want me to pass the screen share back over to you?
No, I got one more.
Either way, we've got one more left. You got it.
Gotcha. So data. This was one that actually just popped in. Sharing scorecard data with the rest of the organization.
Good question.
Well, there's only a couple of things that everyone in the organization can see inside 90, right, Christine? So they can see the VTO, they can see the accountability chart. And on the VTO, we've got, very simple set of numbers that goes along with every quarter and year and 3 year and whatnot. But you don't see other team scorecards, right, Christine?
Right. I would say you can share individual measurables. So
Right.
I don't know if it makes sense to share your entire leadership team scorecard with the whole company, but once you start getting to a measurable by measurable basis, instead of adding a brand new measurable, like let's take our NPS score as an example. We look at our NPS score at the leadership team level, but then I also want to look at it with client success and with development too. So I'll just go to the scorecard and use add existing measurable, and that way it can be tracked everywhere. So I only need to enter the number once, but it'll still show up on multiple scorecards. So that's probably how you want to tackle that sort of sharing aspect, is deciding which specific measurables should be on multiple scorecards to begin with.
Yeah, because you could create a team called All Hands, for instance. And whenever you had a state of the company or an all hands meeting, you could walk through a small set of scorecard numbers that you're excited about. That's not a bad plan at all.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, that's up at that plus up there at the top. Maybe just click on the plus for a second. You should.
Next to weekly.
Yeah. So add an existing measurable. That's what you want to do to build that out. So you're not creating new measurables. You're just pulling from the full. And one of my clients pointed out that it's hard to get rid of measurables, and you have some measurables that aren't in use anymore. So that happens. But all of the measurables do show up in this list available for you to add at that point. Is that all measurables, or is it just the ones that you're allowed to see based on who you are, Christine? Monica, do you know? Because Christine's gone.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's only the ones
Or
that you
after
have
she's
Okay.
visibility into. Otherwise, that would be kind of a way you could
It'd be weird.
slip around it. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be weird. Good. All right. Anything else? We got a couple more things in chat. Is there?
It was all people asking about the beta. I think that's all the IDS that we've got today.
Fantastic. Either we did a great job explaining everything, Christine, or we wore everybody out.
maybe a little bit of both.
Okay, good.
But sorry about my internet. Appreciate everybody joining. So we'll
Hey,
be
we're
sure to
work
send
from
out all these
everywhere.
resources after all.
We're a work from anywhere team, Christine. So sometimes that happens.
It's inherent to the system.
All right. Well, Monica, thanks for your help. Stephen, thanks for your help. Thanks, everybody. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.